All right. I know that we cannot agree on everything, but I would assume that we can all agree on this when we go on our cruise ship vacations. We do not want to get norovirus. I think everybody's in agreement on that. Maybe, unless there's one, interesting person out there that's like, no, I think I'd like to have some gastrointestinal illness on my cruise. Well, unfortunately, the news has come out that there were 3 confirmed outbreaks of norovirus on cruise ships in March, and more cases under investigation. And you may be asking yourself, well, which cruise lines are that? And what is norovirus? And what do I do to not get it? And what do I do if I get it? Well, I got all those answers for you. Cruise news and my views. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to La Lido Loca. I am your host, Tony, here with the latest cruise news and views for your upset stomach. For your upset stomach on Friday, the 31st. The 31st of March, 2023. And well, there's a few reports out there popping off about confirmed outbreaks of the norovirus. If you're unfamiliar with the norovirus, it is a virus that often impacts people that are clustered together in communal type situations. It is spread through the contamination of food and water sources. It can be picked up off of surfaces. Sometimes it's associated with things like food poisoning or gastrointestinal illness. The symptoms include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, stomach cramping. Also, there's sometimes chills, low-grade fever, muscle aches, and a general sense of tiredness. The illness will come on you suddenly, usually lasts 1 or 2 days, and it's pretty darn miserable. Fun fact, and thankfully, it happens more on land than it does at sea. You see these outbreaks happen in schools sometimes, hospital situations. Again, it's one of those fast-spreading viruses, and it's easy to pick up. But there's a few things that you can do to not get it. But let's talk about what's going on in 2023 with cruise ships and how we figured out that there is norovirus on cruise ships beyond just piles of people getting sick. What happens is piles of people get sick on cruise ships. Cruise lines, cruise ships report it to the CDC. The CDC does an investigation. They gather samples, that kind of thing. And the CDC tries to determine what the cause of these sicknesses are. It's called the etiology. That's what the causation is. I just learned that word today. I feel very proud. Gold star for me. Etiology. There's a new word for you. It's easy to spell. Etiology. I could be in a spelling bee now. And it's a good word for causation. I don't know if you could use it in the sense of causation if it's not a medical. I don't want to squirrel off here, but yes. So the CDC, they spend time trying to figure out the etiology, and they have just announced that for 3 cruise ships in March, they have determined that the etiology, the causation, is the norovirus. Those cruise ships were the Celerbrity Equinox that was sailing from March the 9th to March the 18th, 136 cases on board of crew and passengers. Celebrity cruises, the Constellation, Celebrity Constellation, March the 6th through the 17th. They had 96 passengers and crew sick with the norovirus. And then the Ruby Princess, it was determined that there was norovirus on board February the 26th through March the 5th. And they had 318 cases. So that was a big outbreak there. Overall, since the beginning of 2023, CDC has investigated 9 cruise ships that have these outbreaks of gastrointestinal symptoms, that kind of thing. And so far, they've determined that 4 in 2023 were norovirus. There was another one in March that they're trying to determine whether or not it was norovirus that continues to have some challenges. This is Royal Caribbean's Enchantment of the Seas. They targeted the March the 11th through March the 23rd sailing. Whether or not that was norovirus. I did do a little research on what it takes to prevent norovirus and what to do if you get norovirus. I'm going to tell you all about that. But first, let me quickly invite you to subscribe. If you like staying up to date with everything going on in cruising, please consider subscribing with the notification bell on. That way you don't miss out on any of these episodes. Thank you in advance. Before I tell you about what causes norovirus and what the prevention is, I got to ask this question, and it's going to be a little gross. So often when I go on cruises, I'm doing okay when it comes to going to the restroom. Okay. But it seems like after I get the first meal or two in me on a cruise ship, a lot of it breaks loose, and my whole consistency changes. I don't know if anybody else has that, but that happens to me quite often on cruise ships. I don't know if it's something about the cruise food, or maybe I got some sort of IBS because of the stress of embarkation day. But almost every time when I embark a cruise, I go from a fairly consistent experience to an inconsistent experience. Does anybody else get a little weird action when you go on a cruise? If hopefully that's, sorry if that's TMI, but maybe that's a common experience, and I don't know if anybody else has that or if that's just me. Leave a comment below. And you could use a poop emoji if you want. But how does norovirus happen? It's a simple virus. It's viral, right? So you can't treat it with antibiotics or anything like that. It is viral, and so it just spreads, and it spreads primarily through, contaminated food, contaminated water, and contaminated surfaces. And one of the biggest ways to prevent that contamination is just good old personal hand hygiene. Washing your hands before you handle food, washing your hands after you use the restroom, washing your hands when you touch communal surfaces like, the plate stack and the tongs in a buffet, the doors of restrooms. Keeping your hands clean will reduce the spread of norovirus. Of course, cruise lines know this, and that's why you don't have hundreds of outbreaks on cruise ships. Think about that. There's hundreds of cruise ships and cruise voyages that happen every week, and there's only a minuscule amount of outbreaks or conversations about norovirus. And to me, it's really amazing because it's such a contagious virus. But we could all go a long way to reducing norovirus on cruise ships if we just make sure that we wash our hands. Traditionally, one of the places I very rarely would wash my hands was after handling the tongs on the buffet. But now we kind of have a ritual where we at least sanitize our hands when we get back to the table before we consume our lunch. Again, we're going to use forks and knives. Most of the time, you're not sticking your hands in your mouth, but maybe you are. Maybe you got a piece of bread there that you handled with tongs, but who knows what's on the tongs? And so now you're putting, your hands on a piece of bread. So, just simple stuff like making sure that you wash your hands, that you do good hand hygiene. I'm just going to say it a bunch in this video. The fact that they have to have people to tell you to wash your hands on the cruise ship is indicative of how often people don't wash their hands on the cruise ship. So maybe this will be a nice public service announcement. And then what's the big way to treat norovirus? Well, again, it's viral. There's really nothing that you can do about it from a virus perspective. But one of the big challenges with what happens with norovirus, because you tend to, vomit, you tend to have diarrhea, that results in dehydration. And so the big prescription for what to do when you have norovirus is to stay hydrated, to keep the water flowing, to keep the liquids flowing, so that as your body works through this virus, that you will have plenty of hydration, that you won't be dehydrated, putting yourself at risk for other ailments. I'm assuming none of us have gone our whole lives without having some sort of retching, food poisoning, gastrointestinal, possibly norovirus experience. I don't know that I've ever been a part of anything that was labeled norovirus, but I've certainly had some, 3 or 4 days with the stomach ache and, not being able to hold everything down and being in that dehydration state. Fortunately, never really on a cruise ship, other than the weird thing I talked about that almost happens on every cruise. But what about you? How's your stomach hold up on cruise ships when it comes to the food? Have you ever been a part of an official norovirus outbreak? Do you wash your hands? Anything you want to talk about, leave a comment below. Thank you guys so much for checking out the show today. I sure hope you enjoyed it. You can show your support by hitting the like button, and make sure you check out the video that's popping up next. This is Tony for La Lido Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido.